One of my favorite things about Fallout 76 is the way Bethesda keeps the weapon lineup fresh for the most part. Whether it's through story expansions or seasonal rewards, they've done an amazing job over the years of keeping that lineup nice and fresh. And in Season 21, of course, no difference here. They've added another unique weapon to the lineup, the Icebreaker. Now, is this weapon trash or is it another potential diamond in the rough? Is it a Titanic sinker or a Titanic stinker? Today I'm breaking it all down so you don't have to. Now, if you want to get one of these for yourselves, it's pretty straightforward. Like I said earlier, Bethesda has been adding these new weapons mainly in two ways, either by giving it to players as a reward from a new quest or a boss fight through a story expansion, or of course by having it be a purchasable weapon from the season scoreboard, and the Icebreaker falls into the latter category. You could pick yourself up the Icebreaker from page 6 of Season 21 scoreboard for 60 tickets, or you can wait and hope Bethesda adds it to the main game as a gold or stamp purchasable plan like they've done in the past with the Cold Shoulder or with a bunch of other weapons. Now, in terms of mods, this is actually the first recent season weapon that doesn't require you purchase the mods separately as long as you know the base harpoon gun mods. So if you wanted to like get the cremator mods for the cremator through the season, you would have to purchase the actual mod boxes separately, but if you have the harpoon mods like for the base weapon itself, congratulations, you now have all of the mods for the Icebreaker, so you don't have to spend any more tickets on this thing. It costs 60 tickets and then you're done. So is the Icebreaker good or is it just a gimmick? Well, let's look at the stats and the effects before we get into the actual testing of the weapon. As you can see, the Icebreaker is coming in with a pathetic base physical damage of 147 per shot, plus the 147 cryo damage per shot, which is pretty lackluster. The harpoon guns in Fallout 4 definitely hit a lot harder, but it also has 3 harpoons in the mag, which I guess you can call a little bit of an upgrade compared to the base harpoon guns, and of course it only cost 18 AP per shot in VATS, which really isn't that bad. So if you have a VATS build, this thing does decent damage, plus it costs, you know, not very much AP, but there are better options out there. But now, like I previously mentioned, the Icebreaker does have some weapon mods. I didn't use them in the footage just because I like how, to see a weapon performs at its base level, but you could definitely put them on for some better damage. These mods are the Barbed mod, which puts a bleed effect on your target that does 3 damage per second for 5 seconds. The Flechettes mod, which adds 6 projectiles that explodes and then applies a small stagger to enemies, so either one of those mods can be applied if you know, but overall pretty basic and disappointing in terms of stats. Now, I wouldn't, say that the stats are really a giant lookout for this weapon. Really, the only improvement over the base harpoon guns from Fallout 76 would just be the magazine having 3 harpoons rather than 1. But it still shoots pretty slow, and obviously it just doesn't do as much damage as you would want it to on the actual card. But what about the effects? What makes the Icebreaker special? There has to be some redeeming quality of this weapon. At least that's what we're all thinking, right? Now, the Icebreaker will always spawn with the same legendary effects, and these effects are, firstly, being 30% reload speed, which is nice. The reload speed on harpoon guns are pretty slow, so I guess that does increase the DPS slightly, but not much. Up next, we have hit slows targets by 30% for 6 seconds. Nothing too insane. This is pretty much standard for all cryo weapons. Cold Shoulder basically has the same effect, so that's just something that gets thrown on there because it's a cryo weapon. Now, next up, we have bashes slow targets by 60 seconds for 12 seconds. This, I think, is completely useless. This weapon would be definitely a lot more usable if it had a better 3rd-star effect. This one is kind of useless in my opinion. I don't get why they're trying to buff bashing so much. It's just an entirely useful effect. Basically, this effect makes this weapon a little bit of a paperweight in my opinion. They just could have done so much better, but they just threw this on there. But now, this is where things get a little fun. We have, next up, kills explode for 25 cryo damage and slow enemies by 30% for 6 seconds. Again, this is where the unique effects of this weapon actually start to kick in, but are they good? You know, is this AoE cryo effect explosion like good? But the final effect is kills leave behind cryo hazards for 12 seconds, hazards deal 15 cryo damage, and then hazards slow enemies by 6% for 3 seconds, or 60%, excuse me, for 3 seconds. So again, not too difficult to understand what's going on here. As you can see, the icebreaker obviously has a lot to do with cryo. That's the whole gimmick. It's a cryo harpoon, but let's break it down further. So each kill will cause a cryo AoE explosion that slows and damages all nearby enemies, and they leave behind cryo hazards for 12 seconds, which are basically little cryo mines that explode on contact. You can clear large groups of weaker enemies like ghouls, or you could freeze a large group of tougher enemies like super mutants. So it's meant to be a crowd control go-to, freeze everything on the board, which sounds nice on paper. But as we're going to see in a second here, is it actually feasible? I don't know if you can tell. I'm not really the biggest fan of this weapon. They definitely could have done a lot more with it. Like, they could have increased the damage of it or anything like that. But we're going to get to see how it actually plays in a little bit. But as you could tell by the card here, and you should be able to see it on screen, or should have saw it on screen while I was going over the effects, you know, it's mainly focused on that. Kill an enemy, they'll blow up, they'll leave the cryo little mine behind, and then hopefully you'll be able to freeze and slow down all of your enemies. This weapon is supposed to be, just from the effects, kind of like a sit in the background, tag enemies with it, and then also, like, you know, one-shot some weaker enemies. But, you know, in terms of actual wasteland effectiveness, it is a little lackluster, so let's get into the actual testing of this weapon. As you've seen throughout this whole video, the icebreaker definitely has its positives when it comes to combat, and it definitely has a whole host of negatives. In my opinion, it has more negatives than positives, but I may be on the outlier with that opinion. Now, this weapon can definitely deal some solid damage against enemies, but there are some obvious better options. But we know this weapon is meant to be used as a freezing tool. Unfortunately, there are just so many better options for that one specific category of tool. You know what I mean? Like, the cold shoulder is a lot better. Even the plain cryolator is a lot better for freezing things. There are just better options out there. Even the raid grenade launcher, I'm forgetting the name of it off the top of my head, but the two-shot cryo grenade launcher, that's even phenomenal for crowd control, but this thing just doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And if you've seen any of my other weapon group videos or weapon type videos or any reviews about weapons and Fallouts, let's see how it fares up against each group of enemies. For the low tier enemies, like the Scourge or the ghouls, this thing is obviously a one-shot and works as intended. If you go to Whitespring, group up all the ghouls, you could really see this thing shine, and you could see what it's supposed to be. You could see the cryo hazards, you could see the cryo damage, you could see the slowing, but unfortunately, the effectiveness kind of stops there. If you move on to mid-tier enemies like your super mutants or anything like that, this thing drops off dramatically. Don't get me wrong, you'll see me in the footage one-shotting some of these super mutants and everything like that, but I'm one-shotting super mutants with a harpoon gun, and the harpoon gun is meant to be used as a tool to freeze enemies also while doing damage. So you could hit, like, you know, 5,000 damage crits, but the AoE starts to drop off dramatically. The freeze effect is still nice, just don't get me wrong, but you'll have to fire a lot more harpoons to kill a group of super mutants compared to a group of Scourged or ghouls, and honestly, it's just not fun to use against this, like, enemy type either. The drop-off is just really felt and just makes you not want to use the actual weapon. You know what I mean? Like, I would much rather use basically any weapon, any other weapon, especially a cold shoulder, while going through and killing these super mutants. And then obviously, finally, I wanted to talk about how effective this thing is during, like, the nuke events or anything like that, because it is supposed to be a tool. The cold shoulder, again, is really good on nuke events. You could freeze the queen, you could stun lock the queen. However, it's not that useful. Don't get me wrong, you can potentially freeze the nuke bosses, but you won't be able to stun lock them. So you will be able to help your team, but if someone has a cold shoulder, or again, even a cryolator, they will be able to outperform you in terms of damage and even effectiveness towards your team. So I would highly recommend using anything else for damage, and I would highly recommend using any other cryo weapon for freezing or stun locking the bosses. If you're doing it with friends for fun, sure, go ahead, and if this is the only cryo weapon you have, I understand that. However, There are just better options when it comes to this. As you've seen in the testing, the weapon isn't that good. Sure, I don't have cards on to buff the stats or anything like that because I wanted to do this as a base review, but a base fixer is a lot better than this. A base cold shoulder is a lot better than this. Against low tier enemies, you can use it and it's supposed to, and it works how it's supposed to. Against mid tier enemies, drops off dramatically. And then finally, against those nuke and raid bosses, you're just so outperformed by every other cryo weapon. It doesn't make any sense to use this weapon in that regard. So you're probably wondering, is the Icebreaker good? Are there any redeeming factors of this weapon? Is there a saving grace? And to that, I have to say no. The Icebreaker isn't good, and there's not a saving grace. This is actually the worst season exclusive weapon I could think of. At least the Circuit Breaker could actually stun lock enemies. This just fails to basically do everything. Who knows? Maybe they'll release some crazy cryo update in the future, but the damage on this thing is underwhelming. Even with all the extra cryo damage you could dish out, it's just not a good weapon. And the 3-shot magazine doesn't really help with the damage output significantly. I did say it kind of helps because sure, compared to another harpoon gun, but there's a reason why no one really uses the harpoon guns in Fallout 76. They just suck. Again, it's just not enough to make the weapon redeemable. Sure, you could shoot 3 nerf darts at an enemy instead of 1 nerf dart. I guess it'll slightly hurt more. And the final nail in the coffin in terms of disappointment has to be the effects. Don't get me wrong, the cryo AoE and the hazards are a great mechanic, and it would be amazing to see that on a cryo SMG. Like, that would happen if you hit a critical with an SMG or something, or even the cold shoulder, you know what I mean? But it doesn't really help this weapon. There are so many better cryo weapons out there that have AoE attacks or AoE effects or something like that that perform basically significantly better than this thing. It's just not a good weapon to use. If I had to rate this weapon, I would give it a flat 0. Bad damage, bad effects, but I will say it does have one positive, and that's the skin. This skin looks so good. It has that nice cryo effect. It even looks better than the cold shoulder, in my opinion. But unfortunately, what sucks is you can't put this skin on any other weapon. If you were just buying this skin for the 60 tickets, I would say do it. Sure, it's a cosmetic item, but it doesn't matter. But unfortunately, if you want to see the skin, you're stuck using this overpriced paperweight. Do yourself a favor and save the 60 tickets for something else, some Adams or something, or even Dottie if you haven't gotten Dottie. She's the new season ally, and she is significantly better than the Icebreaker. So I would not recommend using it. I don't recommend buying it. I think it is a terrible weapon, and it just doesn't make sense. Again, damage is underwhelming, the effects are underwhelming, and just the whole entire cryo is underwhelming. It doesn't make any sense. I wish that they would maybe revamp the harpoon weapons and make them like they did in Fallout 4. They were really fun to use in Far Harbor. However, in Fallout 76, they're just completely overshadowed by basically every other unique weapon in the entire game. Again, I'm a strong believer that this is the worst season exclusive weapon. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think the worst one is? I think by far this one is, considering the last one that we got was like the cremator, which is awesome. You know what I mean? Then we also got like the cold shoulder not too long ago. I think that was like a year or 2 ago or something like that. Maybe even 3 by now. However, normally the season exclusive weapons are like really fun or like they're a really cool gimmick, and this one is just harpoon gun that shoots ice, and it just unfortunately doesn't make any sense, and it's just not good. If you have a build that actually utilizes this thing, please let me know in the comments. I would love to see how people are using this thing, and maybe if I'm just an idiot and I'm just not using it correctly, but I think this is probably one of the worst unique weapons in all of Fallout 76. Well, ladies and gents of the Wasteland, we made it to the end of another Fallout 76 video. I hope you found it useful. If you're thinking about buying the Icebreaker, do yourself a favor and stay far from it. I seriously think it's the worst season exclusive weapon that they've added in the entire game, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Let me know what your favorite season exclusive weapon is. Mine would probably also be the cremator or maybe the cold shoulder. I know I keep talking about the cold shoulder a lot, but it is probably one of my favorite cryo weapons in the entire game, and with the most recent shotgun buff, I have been using it a little bit more on some of my spare characters just to have as a good weapon, so it is pretty fun. However, this thing, complete opposite. Stay away from it. Don't waste the 60 tickets. This is not a savior. This is not a Titanic killer. It is a Titanic stinker, like I said in the beginning of the video. But there we have it. As always, I appreciate you motherfuckers for watching this motherfucking video, and I will see you out there in the wasteland. Again, let me know your opinion in the comments. I feel like this opinion isn't really that like crazy or anything like that. It's a pretty bad weapon. It's super gimmicky, and I just haven't seen a lot of people make videos about it besides like Angry Turtle when the season first came out. So I know this is a little bit later. People have had some time to test around with it, and a lot of newer players are asking me if they should like spend their tickets on it because so many people know about, you know, the circuit breaker was a decent weapon because it could stun lock bosses, or you know, the cold shoulder came out in the season exclusives as a season exclusive weapon and it was really fun. So a lot of people, every time they see a season exclusive weapon, they think, oh man, should I buy this? I just wanted to make this video. Don't waste your tickets. Just steer clear of this weapon. I mean, if you're a collector and if you want to have every unique weapon in the game, sure, go ahead. That's why I bought it. But if you're thinking about using it or wanting to add something else to your arsenal, stay clear of this weapon. Do not buy it. Again, let me know what you guys think about it in the comments, and I will see you motherfuckers in the wasteland.